This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, you're on.
All right, good morning. Please welcome everyone to the July 12th, 2022 Governance Committee, Finance Committee, regular board meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulated District, occurring virtually as well as here in the town of Boonville municipal offices, Route 12 in Boonville, New York, with board members and members of the public participating as well. The board and the committee agendas are available at hrbrd.ny.gov under board meetings. We ask that you please close other programs on your computer or cell or phone, and silence your cell phone, mute your audio when not speaking. The conference organizer will monitor the program chat function for public comment. Comments may be also mailed to hrao@hrbrd.ny.gov, mail hro@hrbrd.ny.gov. We begin this morning with the governance committee meeting. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this governance committee is called to order, and we'll call Mr. Leslie
Acting Committee Chair Alfred J. Candido Jr.
here.
Committee members Kenneth DeWitt here and Albert Hayes.
Here.
Board Chair Mark Finkel.
Here.
Board Member Timothy Reagan. Here. Executive Director John Callahan.
Here.
General Counsel Robert Leslie. That's me. Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Menicha.
Here.
Chief Engineer Robert Fulton. Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
Board Member Richard Allen. I'm sorry, or Richard Bird. I forgot the name there. Yep. And committee member Nicole Allen. She is here as well. Everybody is accounted for.
Right, thank you. I need a motion to adopt and revise our meeting agenda.
Let's second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Hayes.
The motion to approve the June 14th committee meeting minutes starts on page 2.
I will make that motion.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Committee business. One item for new business. We have a motion to advance to the board of Great Language in the regulated district. Vehicle use for the statewide fleet policy.
The resolution is in the board packet, beginning on page 6. The memo and supporting policy. Basically, this policy will make consistent with statewide policy. The statewide policy has been modified. The most significant modification is that now a commissioner level employee can have a car assigned directly to them and can have a driver as long as that driver has other duties while they're. Yep.
This is the commissioner level. The title of commissioner only or executive director, etc.
The executive director could, if he so believed it was appropriate, the board chair concurred, and he got the approval of the relevant deputy secretary at the government. He could have a car assigned to him.
That's a request from me.
Right. It's something that probably is more relevant to larger agencies where they have those resources. we neither have the resource nor the need.
Can I just add quickly to that, Counselor? Mr. Leslie noted that there's several changes enacted recently in the state's vehicle use policy. Ours was consistent with the state's policy before, and even though he notes that that's significant change, some other ministerial things, this is just to ensure consistency across on the policies that we
That is-
Any questions? Motion to move this to the full board?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hayes,
I'll second it.
Mr. DeWitt,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, no further business.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hayes,
I'll second.
Mr. DeWitt,
Meeting adjourned.
at 10:03.
and slide that gavel down.
Yes, I'll see you.
Call the finance committee meeting to order. Roll call, Mr. Leslie.
Committee Chair Kenneth DeWitt.
Here.
Committee members Albert Hayes
There.
and Timothy Reagan. Board Chair Mark Finkel.
Here.
Board Member Alfred Jr. And Richard Byrd.
Here.
Executive Director John Callahan.
Here.
General Counsel Robert Leslie. Me, Chief Fiscal Officer Tanisha. Here. Chief Engineer Robert Fulton.
Here.
Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
And Board Member Nicole Allen.
Here.
Everybody is counted for.
Motion to adopt the revised meeting agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Reagan,
I'll second that.
Mr. Hayes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I have approval of the June 14th, 2022 finance committee.
I'll make that.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. Reagan.
Any dissent? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Under committee of business, motion to advance to the full board, what resolution authorizing the execution restated Hudson River regulating DFC clean water facility 2017 bonds and facilities issued to the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation to finance a portion of the cost of the reconstruction of the spillway at the Conklinville Dam. Mr. Minuccia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I explain what we're asking the board to do here, I'd like to ask all of you to turn to page 29 in your packet. We need to do just a very, very minor group editing exercise here. In the second whereas clause, line 3, in that line it says in accordance with law, then open parens, section 23, and. Can you please strike the and? So it just will section 23 of the local finance law. Apologies for that drafting error.
Probably might has carried through since probably the first time we did it on. And that's basically the spot that we're looking at.
Okay, so now to the substance of what we're asking the board to do. So for those of you who were not serving on the board in May 2020, at that time we sought from the board to enter into a new financing arrangement with New York State Environmental Corporation for additional work at Conklinville. Part of this request was to extend the term of the original short-term arrangement from an expiration date of November 2nd, 2020 to November 2nd, 2022. The original arrangement was for 3 years. We asked at the time to extend it to 5, which takes us to November 2nd, 2022. All of you know, the district has received support from New York State for additional work at Conklinville in the state fiscal year 2021-22 and 2022-23 budgets, totaling $40 million. As a result, the regulating district has not drawn down any additional funds from the original financing arrangement from EFC. Since the initial drawdown in 2018, a total of $789,343.21 was drawn down to finance ice sluice repair, and $40,000 in principal has been paid, leaving a balance due of $749,343.21. Now our desire to convert this balance from short-term to long-term financing with EFC. Time we sought the previous extension in 2020, we anticipated completing this conversion before the short-term financing arrangement ran out. EFC now informs us that they anticipate going to market sometime between November 2nd, 2022 and the end of this year. And it is for this reason for approval to extend the short from November 2nd to December 31st, 2022 to give EFC time to issue, which will incorporate the amount that we seek to convert. I should also say that $749,343.21 will not be the final amount that we seek to convert, as we anticipate making another principal payment of approximately $15,000 in October, and there will be some charge from EFC to cover the cost of their services in going to market. Happy to pause now and answer questions you might have about this resolution.
EFC is just kind of a holding house for the state, or what?
EFC is a public authority who is responsible for financing clean water and drinking water infrastructure improvements around New York State.
I'm sorry, wait, excuse me. I missed, what's the new term going to be when you say long term? Well, we don't know yet.
So we expect that term, this amount will be converted to long-term financing, which we expect will be 30 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to advance to the full board a resolution authorizing the execution of an amended and restated Hudson River Black River Regulating District EFC Clean Water Facility Note, being a bond anticipation issued to the New York State Environmental Facility Corporation to finance a portion of the cost of the Lucas spillway at the Conklinville Dam.
Get that motion.
Mr. Reagan? I will second that. Mr. Hayes?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Unanimous vote.
Under committee business number 2, motion to advance to the full board a resolution authorize reapportionment to capital projects. Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As all of you know, Title 20 of the Environmental Conservation Law is the enabling and governing statute for the regulated district. Section 25 requires the board to of the expense of operating and maintaining the facilities under its jurisdiction, and to do so for each of the 3 years in its budget period, or last took on June 8th, 2021. Regulating districts' budget for each of those years include best estimates of operating and capital expenses, as well as non-assessment revenues. When the difference between these estimates for expenses and non-assessment revenue exists, revenue from assessments levied on beneficiaries, including the state, are calculated, averaged over 3 years, and fixed as required by statute. The challenge of estimating capital expenses is greater than it is for estimating operating expenses, because the engineering and construction work of a capital project often extends beyond a single fiscal year. We do our very best to estimate the timing of capital spending, but in some cases the work does not flow exactly as originally envisioned. The requirement that the regulating district make estimates for 3 years at a time makes this probably even more challenging than it is for government entities that propose to formally adopt a budget every year. It is for these reasons we're asking to authorize use of a tool employed by many, if not most, state and local government entities. A reappropriation is defined by the state of New York as a legislative enactment that continues all or part of the first balance of an appropriation that would otherwise lapse. Employing this tool will increase the likelihood that spending on capital projects does not materially exceed the authority to spend provided by the board. To put this tool to use, we also have to create a lapse date for all appropriations, which we are recommending be August 31, as that date approximates the time each year when the regulating district's independent audit for the previous year is nearing completion. The amounts you see represent the unused appropriation as of June 30, less 1/4 of that amount to cover any invoices that we receive in July or August for work performed during the last fiscal year. We stop here and offer any questions you may have on this topic or the resolution.
That's coming out of 3 different accounts, Tim, or going to 3 different accounts, you said. Capital improvements, repairs, and engineering consultant.
And repair.
Now, where's that coming from? Is that just money that was coming out of the regular budget?
Nope, it's money that we have approved last June,
Yeah.
so it's there. We just, for a host of reasons, want to ensure that when the spending for certain items carries over into next year, there's sufficient authority.
So this is just a carryover. Okay.
Any other questions? Can I have a motion to advance to the full board a resolution to authorize reapportionments for capital projects?
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. Reagan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I will second that.
Mr. Hayes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Out at 10:14.
That's good first.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call to order the July meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District. So that's a roll call.
Board Chair Mark Finkel.
Here.
Vice Chair Ken DeWitt. Here. Board members Albert Hayes.
Here.
Timothy J. Reagan.
Here.
Alfred J. Candido Jr. Richard Byrd.
Yes.
Executive Director John Callahan.
Here.
General Counsel Robert Leslie. Chief Engineer Robert Folte.
Present.
Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy.
Here.
And Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
Board member Nicole Allen.
Here.
All are accounted for.
Thank you. I'd like a motion to adopt today's meeting agenda.
Mr. Candido.
Second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Hayes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no guests here. Is there a public comment period? Somebody online?
So we've confirmed with Megan Cole that nobody signed up to speak, but Chairman, if you want to pause to see if anybody
Yeah.
that's participating wants to weigh in.
Anyone want to make a comment? Okay, if not, I'd like to move on to number 6, approval of the June 14th, 2022 regular board meeting minutes. You need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. DeWitt.
Second? Or we got the second, sorry. Any questions, additions, or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
The next item is the access permit system appeal from Mulgrew Garcia. We heard all the arguments last meeting, and a couple of members wanted an extra month to review it. We need a motion, and which way we want to go on this.
Basically, I guess you're holding a roll call vote to determine one way or the other.
Yeah.
Do you want discussion before that?
Yeah, let's do the discussion, if there's any further discussion.
I went and looked at it and what you guys already had. And although the stone And the picture looks like there's a lot there. When you get to it, there's not that much stone there. Just like everybody said, there is nothing to do that off the main road. Might be a little difficult, but it still could have been done pretty easy going through there. I think John was worked out the issue, and so I can see why the stone might have ended up getting there. I think he was just trying to work out the issue, and I don't think the stone's the issue. I think there's a bigger. My personal feeling is I don't think the stone's the issue. I think there's a bigger issue. Yeah, that's what I. And I told somebody that I was Black River, Hudson River, because I didn't want to think I was something bad coming down there or something. It wasn't dated that.
My opinion of this is that it's always, again, it's the precedent that we set if we don't do anything. I don't vote on this, but I would come down in favor of them removing the stone.
I second that.
I'd like to make a comment. I personally have not viewed the site on video, so I was looking at everything that was sent to me. It was all sent very good work. And Megan's part, as I was saying, I couldn't see it. She was loading them up, pushing. So I was able to read and see everything. And I just have to, my comments, I have a background, 34 years in criminal justice, and spent a lot of that time in criminal justice. And this is a strike. And I also live on a canal near waterway, so I had my restrictions. I had permits, I had fees. I had to require permits, request permits when I made improvements to the water, and myself and quite a few people. And I believe that I've seen and heard that people rationalized what they were doing, and they're wrong. And the people on my side, and I think we need as a board to take and stand up the staff that has worked on this for quite a long time. And they're going to find jobs, people in the field, boots on the ground, back to the executive director. Because that's their job. Their job is to protect the waterway and enforce the rules with everyone. And as negative as that's, not punitive in any way. I'm not looking at it as punitive. It's just that it was wrong, and they have to put it back to the way it should be.
And it's worth saying that once that stone is removed, they will work with these people. But I mean, it wasn't like. Should we do a roll call vote or?
So I'm looking for two votes, basically. One, whether or not this is a violation of the access permit rules, and then second, whether or not the gravel should be removed as a result of that first vote. So the first vote, is this a violation of the rules and regulations of the regulating district? That, like, I have two votes recorded, so Sprinkle and Mr. Candido.
So we don't need a motion, we
Just a vote at this point.
all those who think it is a violation, I think we need, you need an exact vote, right, by person?
By person, yeah.
Let's go around the table, please.
I believe it is.
A violation,
Yes.
violation, yes.
Yes. And Ms. Allen?
Violation, yes.
We are 7 yeses with 0 no's, and removal of the gravel by September 21st. Would that be an appropriate date?
September one.
September 1st?
Well, definitely, yes.
Okay.
Gives you enough time.
Mr. Hayes is a yes.
Yes.
Witt's a yes.
Yes.
Mr. Byrd is a yes.
Yes.
Candido's a yes. Mr. Sprinkle?
I just want to ask one question on that.
Sure.
When they start removing that, that's going to be, get everything. So we're just going to be reasonable, right? Restore it to the pre-work condition. But every stone's got to be gone. I'm just saying, they're going to have to dig some of that. Well, I don't know what we I think the idea there
I'm good.
is,
I'm good.
I think we're talking the same language.
Yes. Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Again, we have 7 votes in favor of driver removal by September 1st. With your acquiescence, I will send a letter to the appellant manifesting the board's decision.
Correct.
Okay.
And I want to thank the staff for working on this and the board for really taking serious consideration.
And I think it's important we do. I think it's important.
I do
to look at these things. The line, but we try to still keeping with what we need to be doing, but still showing
Any other comments, questions before we move on? And again, thanks everybody for their diligence on this. Next is the report of our executive director.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everyone, my report appears on page 60. I'll just note a couple of things, either late breaking or have evolved further since the report. One is our search for new office space for the Hudson River area office in downtown Albany. As the board is aware, we had last year a great deal on state-owned, essentially, the public authority owned space here in Plaza, which has been sold to a developer. So we have been looking for as good a deal, certainly in workable space that allows us to advance our mission. We had narrowed that down to 3 viable options, looking heavily at one option that we had hoped maybe to bring to the board today as a recommendation. We've got some late breaking numbers with some very minor build out that the landlord would need to do. And those numbers, frankly, sit here today have caused us now to want to go back to our matrix and to see if that option moves out sort of the top 3. And just for the boards, we had arrived at the least expensive options. We discounted the least expensive option because it wasn't very workable. The other 3 we looked at more closely, arriving at this one. We did get some follow-up information from the building representative on Friday and again yesterday, but as I say, just not enough time for us to, in good conscience, make an informed recommendation to the board. It does potentially put us down a little bit timing-wise. The new owner of the building has said that they will work with us, but certainly we will need to come to you with a recommendation in September, and hopefully move very quickly after that. So that's a little update on that effort. Just also want to note, after the meeting today, we will be touring the Hawkinsville Dam project. Very exciting to be moving forward with this important capital project after many years of debate, discussion, controversy even, Chairman, as I gather, but certainly a great project. We'll be joined by a representative of the Environmental Service Group and also County Executive Vicente as well. So we're very excited, and the chief engineer is doing his no rain dance as we speak. We'll get this in before the second round of rainfall today. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, in addition here to today's program, if I may, we've got a resolution later in the agenda that seeks to post and fill the plant operator position in the Black River area. Tim Harwood has ride off into the sunset, so to speak, or maybe off into the sunset. But we've got a resolution here that I would read, and you'll ask for a motion. Resolution of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District honoring principal plant operator Timothy R. Harwood. Whereas Timothy R. Harwood began his employment with the regulating district in November 2006 as a plant operator based at the Black River Field Office at Stillwater Reservoir. And whereas Mr. Harwood's distinguished career at the regulating district of nearly 2 decades included promotion to principal plant operator in the Black River area. And whereas the regulating district has benefited from Mr. Harwood's skill, dedication, and professionalism in the execution of his duties. And whereas Mr. Harwood has earned the respect and admiration of his colleagues through his work ethic, honesty, thoughtfulness, and devotion to public service. And whereas Mr. Harwood is retiring from the regulating district as principal plant operator, and whereas Mr. Harwood's long and exemplary public service to those benefiting from Black River area operations merits recognition and acclaim, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District hereby commends Timothy R. for his years of faithful service to the people and communities served by the regulating district. And be it further resolved that the Board of the Hudson River Regulating District expresses its sincere gratitude to Timothy R. Harwood for the invaluable contribution he has made to the regulating district's mission through his faithful service. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution suitably engrossed be transmitted to Mr. Harwood with the board's best wishes for a long and happy retirement.
And I'm very happy for a motion to that effect.
I would be glad to do that.
Very good. We have a second.
Mr. Candio.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
You're going to miss not driving up that number, that road from the corner of your park. That was exciting.
Is that conclude your report? I'm sorry.
That does conclude my report. Pause for any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Callahan? On to contracts and actions. First one being a resolution authorizing the executive director to hire the most qualified candidate for the plant operator position in the Black River area. Since we now have an
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As discussed with the departure of Tim Harwood, we are seeking to fill with a qualified candidate as a result of mayors and superintendents interviewing qualified plant operator. Any questions?
have a motion.
I'll make that motion. Mr. Reagan?
Second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Hayes?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, a resolution to accept revised agreement of the Barley Appraisal Group Incorporated for appraisal services work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a subsequent amendment to the previously amended agreement with Barley Appraisal Group for the fair market value appraisal of the Stillwater improvements at the Water Associates plant at the Stillwater Reservoir. This is for work to assess the competing appraisal documents that were provided by Stillwater Associates. It may not come as a shock to the board to hear that there is some difference between Stillwater Associates appraisal and the one we've commissioned with Stillwater Associates with Barley Appraisal Group. So we've asked for a quote on the additional scope of work. Do this analysis documents we were provided by Stillwater Associates. That estimate comes in just under $1,000. We're asking for the board's authorization for another $1,200 in the event, as we've done at least once before, we want to go back and have Mr. look at this thing or that thing, and not have to come to the board again because there was $1,200. And then I don't know how the council would add to this, but it was Stillwater Associates and figure out how we select the third appraiser. The fair market value of the plan will be acceptable to the Office of State Controller once we agree on a purchase. Provided we go on that. The council would do anything with that.
Our appraisal through Barley and the appraisal documents that Stillwater have provided to us are greater than 15% apart disparate numbers. Ours being lower and theirs being much, much higher. The original agreement requiring the district to purchase the plant at the end of the expiration of all reservoir operating agreements and extensions provides mechanism through which the two appraisers would then choose a third appraiser. Amendments more recent to those extensions have clarified how we would do that. I expect ultimately what will happen is we will end up choosing a third appraiser and Stillwater will acquiesce to that. We'll end up splitting the cost and that appraisal document on the basis for either further extension of the operating agreement or our outright purchase of the plant.
And if we purchase the plants, we purchase the plant. Maintain it. We would have to through a competitive process, we would have to identify and retain. Okay. And they would have that a plan for that project. First, license exemption. So they would, and then the subsequent, it would be incumbent upon that subsequent operator to get the exception moved to them.
It's probably not required, it's possible, because the district is the co-trustee, so there's not. It has to do with the size of the generation. Under 5 megawatts.
And if we purchased a third party to run it, because why? Or we would, as opposed to running it ourselves and just. I'm just curious, I just have no idea. It goes to our statutory, the limits of our statutory.
We have made an informal inquiry to the Office of the Attorney General as to whether we would have statutory authority to run the plant. There is specific statutory authority in other authorities enabling statutes, which our neighbor lacks. Based on that cursory review, decided not to ask for a formal opinion in general, such that question is open as to whether we possess the statutory authority to generate and sell power from the plant currently existing.
And we couldn't work out a deal with Power Authority where we would a nice big rent check.
They may be in the event that we are in a position where we have other entities. They're one of those entities, one of those public authorities that does have specific authority to generate the sun.
I was just looking at the project stream, and if there wasn't a way that we couldn't get a long-term part of that. We have a part of the current profit stream, which we've suggested several times to Stillwater Associates. We're eager to continue. But, it's interesting too. It's possible, and I don't know if you have any insight on this, but whoever the successful proposer is may want to come in and replace the unit that's there, which is a little bit antiquated, has some issues, and as opposed to a few years ago, the environment for hydro development now is a little more open to it, a little better than it has been. I don't know if the would is certainly their state has the most ambitious energy independence goals, renewable goals, innovation. Hydro is a big part of that, and I certainly like to continue to see hydro downstream of our operations. And there are relative to Power Authority, I don't know how viable that would be. They don't have any other facilities in the area. They don't have facilities as small as talking about here. But certainly, I think some other private operators would have a real interest in the site.
I still envision 3 or 4 little dams coming out, 3 or 4 power stations down there. One right after another. That's right.
There are a series of those over there.
I know some down there. Yeah, I know there's some down there. There's an old dam that's gone down in Crogan that's gone out. So I'm just, not a lot of people getting in the dam building business. I like the outside the box. The beavers are doing.
Now, this is 5 kilowatts.
It's, oh, no, the current, is about 2 megawatts, 2,000.
So what happens if you put new equipment in there? And it,
Well, that was
doesn't start.
one of the comments I'm gonna make is that, you know, we may wanna look at when we solicit proposals, to see if someone would be interested in what they propose. Build and not push us into a major license. Use the room available under the current exemption for license. I mean, and I think that the main difference between the two license structures, and despite the fact that we're exempt from licensing, we're not exempt from all the damn safety regulations. But typically a smaller project is exempt from our licensing. It's also exempt from some of Part 12D safety requirements. We are not, because of the size of the reservoir and the height of the dam, despite it being licensed, we still have to comply with those regulations. So the increase in capacity may not necessarily need any additional cost or effort on our to comply with that revised license for
I just see a hell of a commercial, you guys. I see the governor there, up there, right on top of the thing, saying, I just support putting in this new generation to make New York State not on foreign oil, and I stand by it. I mean, you guys gotta sell this old one. Look at that. There's not a better place for commercial. Look it down through there. Okay. So without any other questions, Charlie, we ask for the board.
Yeah, so I need a motion, a resolution, to accept the advisory agreement with Barley Appraisal Group.
Danilo?
Do we have a second?
Mr. Ray?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to staff and committee reports. The governance committee report, Candido.
Committee met prior to this meeting and unanimously passed motion to advance to the full board for consideration, a resolution to amend the vehicle policy, vehicle use policy of the district, and Mr. Leslie can explain the details. Otherwise, it's on the board package of
That was page 3 of 3.
If there's no questions, then
Okay, so looking for a motion, resolution to incorporate that language.
I'll make that motion.
We have a second?
Second?
Mr. DeWitt?
Yeah, we had the discussion before, but if there's any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The Finance Committee report, Mr. Duet.
And I have a resolution authorizing the execution of an amended and restated Hudson River, Black River Regulating District, EFC Clean Water Facility Note, 2017 A bond anticipation note issued to the New York State Environmental Facility Corporation to finance a portion of the cost of the reconstruction of the spillway at the Conklin Dam. And again, we've had that discussion before this meeting, and we're all good here. So can I have a motion?
I like that motion.
Mr. Reagan,
Second.
second that, Mr. Hayes. Can we do this by roll call vote?
Can we?
Yes.
Certainly, we can. Whatever council asks. So we'll do the roll call.
Mr. Finkel?
Yes.
Mr. Finkel's yes.
Yes.
Mr. Reagan's yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes is yes.
Yes.
Mr. Byrd is yes.
Yes.
Mr. Candido is yes. Mr. DeWitt is yes. Miss Allen?
Yes.
Miss Allen is a yes. 7 yes votes in favor of the resolution.
Obviously carries. Thank you. One more.
Can I have a resolution to authorize reapportionments for capital projects? Again, everyone else was at that meeting. And can I have a resolution?
I'll make that resolution.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Byrd, opposed? Resolution carries.
Thank you very much. Move on to our staff reports, general counsel, Mr. Leslie.
I would note, discuss Walden and Newgen have delivered their appraisal. Mr. Barley has delivered his appraisal. Both of those appraisals have been delivered to their respective entities, Erie Boulevard and Stillwater Associates respectively. The agreement with Erie has been extended through December 31st, and the agreement with Stillwater has been extended through September 30th. Both of those things have signatures on documents, and we're good to go. Negotiations for both new reservoir operating agreements continue. With regard to Hawkinsville, we have delivered temporary use permit application with the necessary documentation and the concurrent use and occupancy agreement to facilitate the regulating district's contracted use lands off Edmonds Road in Boonville to DEC. I've heard back, but we expect to hear back shortly. I had an opportunity to address an errant notice of petition through which Saratoga County sought to foreclose for non-payment of taxes on what they called a suffixed property on lands owned by the state of New York. Basically, this is a piece of property on Shore Road. Is a result of litigation years ago. The regulating district entered into a stipulation before Supreme Court Justice in Saratoga County allowing a particular property owner who had built their property on state lands to maintain that building as long as they didn't improve the building footprint of the original building. There's actually two property so impacted. One of them we were able to remove. This second one basically didn't pay their taxes on the building to Saratoga County. Saratoga County is foreclosing against the building. And then the third one is a 4-bedroom colonial that is gorgeous. No doubt that that person is continuing to pay their property taxes. Those are vestiges of long ago where perhaps current staff wouldn't have made the same accommodation to the building owners. In any case, I think we have cleared that up with Sarah go around, and I've made notes for my successors in interest to have the same discussion with Saratoga County attorney the next time this happened. It's happened in 2012, 2017, and now 2022.
So are they foreclosing?
They are foreclosing, but only, and in each case, the guy, it's a $300,000 house. And he owes $5,000 in taxes. He's going to pay. But if they don't identify the property as we've gotten a notice of foreclosure, we have to involve the Attorney General, and the Attorney General then has to go get involved and petition the county to get us out of it. It's much easier if we contact them and let us out.
Just from a standpoint, if they did foreclose auction and somebody else bought that property. Okay.
We will buy it and merge the, extinguish that interest and take down the building. It's, I beg you to allow me to do that.
No, so that answers the question of the two properties. Because if those two properties ever did sell, the district would buy it. What if the owner there now wanted to purchase it?
We could purchasing it for fair market value of the building as opposed to the taxes.
So that Supreme Court decision carries.
So we have the right to buy
This is
it
actually
for just
second
taxes.
after. Well, like any foreclosure, we would bid on the property. We would have to get a year.
It's successful bidder. Somebody put out better.
We'd have to be the successful bidder, and then the owner against whom the foreclosure lay would have to not redeem that property within a year. Our interests could be merged and we could extinguish that interest. It's more complicated than it is.
Mr. Candido probably comes, this actually happened quite a bit of canals. Whole houses on canal lands.
Partially.
Partial.
Yeah. A lot of additions would go.
Other than
That's
that,
how we put it.
Other than that, I have 2 FOIA requests, both of which were by the same person. One of which had to do with the Woods Hollow RV park that is still engendering interest. Other than
Any questions, council? No, thank you very much. Our compliance officer, Mr. Zicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report can be found on page 60. A few items worth noting during the reporting period. I completed the quarterly internal control audit of the second level field office. All proper procedures are in place and the accounts were reconciled. 2 additional seasonal laborers were hired, 1 for Comptonville and 1 for the second level field office. That brings us to a total of 4 for the season. The 2 most recent ones were onboarded and began yesterday. I am working with vendors, the executive director and Stephanie Porter, our senior administrative assistant at second level field office, to continue our goal of making the estimate renewal form process easier and more user friendly. We're trying to take 2-part dot matrix printed renewal application and make it nicer and easier for staff internally to process it, and it'll be easier for the public to send it back to us. A couple vendors looking at what that might do to change it, upgrade it, and I'll report information on that. Finally, on pages 67, I report to you each time we meet. The contract status renewal sheets are there for your review, satisfy the public authority requirements. If you have any questions, if not, that completes my report.
Any questions, comments? Chief,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Find the CFO report on page 70 of your packet. Regulating districts combined bank and investment balance of $6,366,030. It's $160 or 2.1% more than the same period last year. I have to report that the sum of personal service employee benefits taxes representing the least seasonal of regulating district expenses are running approximately $54 or 0.9% less than they were during the same period last year. Please be advised that these will not be the final numbers. For the fiscal year that ended on June 30, we will continue to pay invoices submitted or performed in the year 2021-22 until we're ready to finalize the audit of last fiscal year as we approach September. Finally, I mentioned in my written summary that we learned that Travelers, the provider of our crime insurance policy, entered into an agreement with Rick Farrar. Terms of the agreement have not been shared with us. It brings an end to this incident, so you will see all of the tasks on our Inspector General report recommendations tracking sheet are now marked completed. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about any of these items.
Any questions, comments? Thank you. And Chief Engineer, Mr. Colton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report begins on the month of June. We received low average precipitation in the Hudson River area, and inflow to Great Sacandaga and Indian Lake of 61 and 73% of historic average inflow. And our release is out of both Hudson, unfortunately lower than historic average also. In the Black River area, Stillwater saw about 85% of historic average precip, and Old Forge and Six Lake were just slightly over historic average precipitation. And like the Hudson River area, our release of water out of Stillwater, our inflow into Stillwater was below average. Fortunately, low was the release at 71% of historic discharge. As you can see in the graphs, despite all that, we're still tracking fairly close to the target elevation, historic average on the reservoirs. Stillwater, we actually stored a little bit of water, and consistent with some conversations that we've had.
Did you take care of that?
That is in anticipation of, and hope that we'll be able to have a little bit more water for our folks at the northern end of the reservoir come August and September.
Yeah, you better.
So
She'll be there to see if
we're
he's
certainly trying. And the same is true too with because this graph doesn't include estimated information. We had also received some, it's like more inflow to store a little bit more there over the last week or so. And again, that taking advantage of that rain when it comes, while still being able to make the releases that we need to maintain river flows in anticipation of a desire to have a little bit higher elevation by some of these lake associations and users at Indian Lake come August and September. We have that little extra water. And given the last do you have any questions?
I think there ought to be a special.
Okay. I'll never see that award.
Yeah, I believe we had some comments from Indian Lake.
Yes, there were comments and like still, there's a desire to have higher elevations than we previously targeted in the reservoir come August and September, which is nearly impossible unless you put a little bit more water in when it's available, like inflow that we had in June, and so it's the balance. They're going to be a little bit high for some folks, or a little bit too low for others, and we can't create the water in all. This dry weather that we've seen in the last week continues straight through the end of August. Very difficult to achieve those slightly higher elevations at both Indian Lake and Stillwater.
And the
Story a
second
little
other
bit, so, yeah, exactly. So,
Any questions? for Mr. Wilson? Thank you. Any board member questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just note again, if I may, we scheduled the tour for those who can make it to Hawkinsville Dam at 12:30 today, joined by the county executive, possibly the town supervisor. We'll hear from Environmental Service Group and our own chief engineer, Rob Fulton, on the scope of work for this long anticipated safety capital construction project here in the town of Boonville and in the hamlet of Hawkinsville. Probably gives the board an opportunity to have some lunch for those who are sticking around between now and then. But we hope everybody can make it. We hope some members of the fourth estate may show up as well, so we can talk about all the good things we're doing with engineering leadership, the chief engineer, and the fiscal leadership of the CFO. Thanks very much.
I know everybody knows, but there is no meeting next month. Next meeting is in September, and I need a resolution for the 9/13 board meeting at SFO.
So move. Mr. Hayes, Mr. Candido.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Need a motion for adjournment?
Make that motion.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody, as usual.
So we're going to pull the vote up.